This program has been made possible by Weatherby Asset Management. The views and opinions expressed are those of the guest.
Hi, I'm your host, Gael Sylvia, and you're watching Sylvia Global Media Network. My special guest this morning is a lovely friend and an incredible woman named Jacki Zehner. Jacki, thanks so much for being here with us.
Thanks.
How are
nice
you?
To be here.
Good to see you. Jacki Zehner is most known to many of us in the world for this historical accomplishment of being the first female trader and the youngest woman to be made partner at Goldman Sachs. What a lot of people may not know about Jacki is that she's a superwoman in many other fronts as well. She's the wife of a pastor, the mother of two, and she's also the CEO of an organization called Women Moving Millions. She's very actively involved and committed to the role of women in media and supports organizations such as Sundance, among many other wonderful super accomplishments. She's a super lady with a very generous heart. And Jacki, I'm really glad that you and I get to have a conversation this morning around some of the issues affecting women and girls that are important to you.
Right.
Where are you today?
I'm in my home in Park City, Utah.
How's the weather there?
Well, it's been really rainy, I have to say, but it cleared up, and generally speaking, any day in Park City is a good day.
Any day, every day. Hey, Jacki, you're a pastor's wife. How do you balance that role as being a pastor's wife and the expectations associated with a congregation with your other personal and business callings and passions?
You know, it's interesting, Gail Sylvia, my husband was also a partner at Goldman, so his role as a pastor is a second career for him as well. And so he's not as active now in Park City as he was in our previous location, which was Park City, Utah. So, it wasn't a full-time pastor, so I think in that way it was a little easier for me, but it's a highly visible role, and I, of course, I'm a very strong-willed feminist woman. So, as the nature of the community, that we were a part of, it actually worked out great. Yeah, when I wore my Wonder Woman costume, sometimes I took a little bit of slack, but other than that, it was really wonderful. We had such a great community where he was a long-term pastor, as mentioned, in New Canaan, Connecticut. And generally speaking, it's great. I think we're in, kind of in the spectrum, religious spectrum, even though my husband is a very Bible-based guy and just very much a theologian. He's also fairly progressive in terms of, his values and his interpretations of the gospel and faith-related issues. So generally speaking, I might challenge him a little bit, and he pushes me back a little bit when maybe I'm a little too much on the wild side, but I think we're a good match.
Jacki, how do you find women of faith who are also women of wealth in terms of financial accomplishments? Wealth can be defined in so many variety of ways, being such multidimensional creatures that we are. How have you found the faith community of women of wealth to be shifting through the years and through generations, or do you see a shift at all?
That's an interesting question, and I don't know if I've thought about it that much. I mean, I've been very fortunate to find so many women that both share my faith and share my passion for justice and for peace and for gender equality, and it's nice to know that we have that in common. And for me, that's what anchors all the work that I do and why I. That being said, respectfully, that's not true for everyone, and I think the space that I travel in women's philanthropy, people from a variety of faith-based backgrounds and perspectives, we're trying to find, I think, the common ground, and that being around social justice and gender equality issues. But I lean pretty heavily on my friends too, that really, share a faith perspective. And when times get tough, and they often do, that's for me what really holds it together.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you find are facing women and girls today that you're experiencing, in current events that you're also experiencing at a personal level?
Yeah, that's again just a wonderful question. I mean, the issues I care about are so big. I mean, I care about issues and economic justice and general peace of the world, and it's so big sometimes it gets overwhelming. And in terms of some of the issues that are closest to my heart at the moment, I have to say I've been really concerned and overwhelmed with the epidemic of rape and violence in our society. Involved with a very important film called The Invisible War, which looked at the epidemic of rape in the military. That was a film that came out a couple of years ago at Sundance and has since become just very powerful in terms of changing policies. And now I'm looking at getting involved in another film that really looks at the epidemic of rape on college campuses. So I've just been immersed in a lot of the statistics that I've seen, and as a mother of both a 16-year-old boy and a 13-year-old girl that are soon to be going to college and are growing up in a society where it seems sex is everywhere and pornography is everywhere and violence is everywhere. It's something that's just really close to me, not because it's in self-interest, and it is, but just more broadly, I think our culture is one that is, there's a lot more going on around sexual assault and even how we approach relationships and what we want from them. And I think it's very different than when I was growing up, and it's an issue that's really on my heart.
How do you instill your values in a practical level with your children? Is it through conversation around the dinner table? Is it through texting one another when they're in their bedroom upstairs and you're at a meeting? How do you communicate and convey this sense of value and what's important on multiple levels with your own children?
Yeah, it's a constant question that both my husband and I have with each other. I mean, we were really fortunate in the sense that we are both partners at Goldman and have careers that have a lot more flexibility. Greg being primarily in a pastoral role and me with a philanthropic role. So we're really blessed to have a lot of time with our kids, and thankfully so far they really like spending a lot of time with us. So, we have, the faith perspective with Greg being a teacher. We try to anchor a lot of our values, in the that being said, it's just a constant dialogue. And my son has a high propensity for video games. I mean, given choices, he would probably do that 10 hours a day. So a lot of conversations about what he's playing and why, and violence, and how does that compare with the real world. And yeah, it's just a constant conversation. But to me, the most important thing is really being present in your children's lives. And we're very fortunate, and I have the most amazing husband on the planet that's deeply committed to kids. No, I do.
I do.
No, I do.
I do.
I do.
They do exist.
It's a partnership, and we talk all the time about raising good children. And there was this great, actually, Jewish theologian sort of asked this question to ask to your children, which I thought was great, to ask them what they would say. So you're talking to your child, and ask your child, do you think it's more important to us that you are successful or good? Or happy. It was a 3. Successful, good, or happy. And I thought that was such a profound question. And in dialogue with our kids about it, thankfully they gave the answer that we were like, oh, please say good, please say good. But it's just, you realize it's just the course of your life with their lives, and the million things, every day that come up, and how you handle it and how you're setting a good example. And all I can say is I'm certainly not perfect. I've made so many mistakes with my kids, but I hope at the end of the day, that they grow up to be really good kids that, value especially what I think is our core value, which is serving others.
How do they get involved in your philanthropy and teaching them the importance of the philanthropic work that you're doing and finding what's important to them philanthropically?
Yeah, that's also been a journey. I mean, over the course of our time, I mean, again, it's with the 16 and 13-year-old, it's less about sort of the checks. and where we put money, though of course they've had a hand in that. It's more sort of where they get hands-on. So we did a wonderful project back in Connecticut where we actually both gave money and volunteered to a senior center that treated patients with dementia, and we would go there every single week and do something special for the residents there. To now, much more, Matt just came back from a community service trip that he really picked that was in Peru and Ecuador, combined with the language immersion program. And we do things locally in terms of Park City, and actually my daughter and I, which I know is true for many communities, but it's going to be brand new for us here in Park City, is we're going to do the National Charity Week together, which involves, a lot of community building with mothers and daughters and community service. So, I think for us it's a lot doing things together. And then over time, hopefully, they do have a give jar, which they have to give out of their personal resources to charities of their choosing. But we really focus on hands-on experiences.
Hey, Jackie, you mentioned earlier how you've immersed yourself in this area and this major concern associated with women and rape, and reference to the video games. Do you see movement happening around women and girls' empowerment associated with the video gaming industry?
Again, my son and I debate this at length. I mean, boys and young men and older men, way outnumber girls and women in terms of playing, especially video games that one might say are the popular first-person type games. So, it is primarily male audience. Last year, actually, I was at TED, and I listened to a woman, Anika, blah, 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 that has this organization called Femme Frequency, and she gave a TED Talk, or put something online on Kickstarter, to try to raise money for to look at the issue of how women are represented in video games, especially some of the extreme games like I think it's Grand Theft Auto and things like that are super violent and highly sexualized. And the video game community, or certain people in the community, totally came after her. I mean, threatening her life, hacking her accounts, posting pictures of her being beaten up and raped. I mean, it was so extraordinary that it was just beyond my ability to process. So I had my son actually watch the TED Talk about that, and we had a great discussion, and he did a lot of research around it. And from my perspective, I really see there's a problem. Kids opt into games, so you can pick great games that are much more, about strategy, which tends to be the ones my son likes, but the majority of them are these shooter games. And, my son would say, hey, we're killing aliens, men and women, we're killing everyone. So, we're not picking out women. But I think there is, in my view, just a culture not only around video games, but in videos. I mean, talk about something pop right now is the whole blurred line video and Miley Cyrus and all of that. So there's just the amount of violence in our culture, the amount of rape and just chanting and what's appropriate and inappropriate in social media and video games. I think it's all swirling together to make it a really challenging environment to be a kid.
I think it's making a challenging environment to be human beings, because even as adults, as adult women and adult men, we become desensitized in some levels around the impact that all of this has on us, and then trying to reconcile the entertainment component with the real life experience of women and girls that are facing these types of horrors and atrocities, and that there's actual gaming and associated with it. I think that it's going to come to the forefront very quickly here, or eventually, and that what Anika shared last year was just the tip of the iceberg, I think, in terms of what we'll start to see happen. Jackie, a couple more questions that I want to ask before we close this segment of our broadcast with you is, talk to us about women funding women and girls and the significance of communities such as Women Moving Millions. That's how you and I met. And it's such an incredible sisterhood for me, especially for a woman like myself who grew up really more comfortable in an environment surrounded by such loving, supportive men, and not always that kind of experience with women. And then in my 50s to land in this warm community of women and women supporting women and girls globally, it's so unique. And I think our audience should understand the significance of women funding women and girls in communities such as Women Moving Millions, of which you're the CEO.
Well, thank you. Yes, I feel like, and I know so many women like you and me sort of have said this, is that being part of a community of women that are really prioritizing women and girls in their philanthropic efforts is like finding your tribe. And that's how I feel with Women Moving Millions. I mean, when I heard about it, when I left Goldman, I sort of started this journey in philanthropy and the issue of women's leadership and women's empowerment. I can trace it back, way, way back, but I also think working on Wall Street where there were so few women, I was always left with the question of why. And even though we had a great sisterhood at Goldman in terms of not only the partnership, the women that were partners, even though we were few or far between, we really found each other. And starting some of the first women's networks, we found that being in critical mass elevated our presence and our voice, and it became less about, okay, there's one woman complaining or doing something. Now we're a force that we're coming together with ideas and solutions. And in many ways, that's the idea behind Women Moving Millions. It was started by two amazing sisters, Helen LaKelly and Swanee Hunt, in partnership with Chris Grum, who was then president of the Women's Funding Network. And it came out of Helen's research that women were not, even though a lot of women were making huge gifts to universities and to hospitals, and all of that is wonderful, there were very few million-dollar gifts to women and girls organizations, and in particular grassroots organizations that fund women and girls, I would say at the grassroots level. Those include, a lot of women's foundations in the world, a lot of women's rights organizations, very, very few million-dollar gifts. So this initiative was born to really encourage women to think about prioritizing women and girls in their funding and falling back on what's now an incredible amount of research that really points to gender inequality as the issue that underlies so many other issues. And certainly now it's become very popular in many ways because of Half the Sky, because of Girls Rising, because of so many of these films and books that have really highlighted the impact of what happens when you invest in a girl and women in terms of their rights, their education, their health, their economic opportunities. And thus our community is really one that is advocating for prioritization of women and girls in their funding and convening and sharing knowledge so that we use those resources in the most effective way possible.
What's the most commonly misunderstood information or impression about Women Moving Millions that you find that you and other members like myself have to clarify?
Well, I think it's two things. I mean, one is sort of the idea that money is coming to us or through us, and that we are a foundation that makes grants, and that is not what we are. We are a community for individuals who have made commitments of $1 million or more to organizations of their choice. So there's that misconception that, oh, you are a foundation like Ford or Rockefeller or Novo or any of these, and we are not a foundation. We are primarily a community that tries to leverage that collective power and influence to champion more resources to be given with a gender lens. And I think the other kind of misconception is sort of this idea of, well, it's sort of twofold. Why do we need another organization? Maybe one. And, are you just a bunch of, wealthy women that get together and, go hang out at spas or something? Like, is this a club for rich women? And I think that's a challenging, because yes, we are women who have significant resources, but why we come together is for the purpose of advancing women and girls globally. And that really is our focus, is learning from one another, working together, coming up with innovative ideas together with, the grantee partners that we fund, to try to advance women's philanthropy in a way that's never been done before. And in fact, we are making history.
Jackie, the WMM, or Women Moving Millions Summit, is coming up soon. What are the highlights of that summit that will have impact beyond the WMM community and the summit that day that we'll be able to see go forth into the world?
Yeah.
At least, what's your vision for what you'd like to see happen?
Well, this is so exciting because Women Moving Millions, as mentioned, started as a campaign to encourage million-dollar gifts, and now we are a very active, in fact, global community with a much bigger mission and purpose to mobilize unprecedented resources for the advancement of women and girls. So this is really, we kind of got out of the gate only a year ago. I can't even believe it. So this is
I can't believe it either.
Yeah, it feels like forever ago, and we've been meeting and planning for a long time, but we really are only out of the gate for a year. So now it feels like our feet are on the ground. We have a plan. We have an organization. And this summit will really mark something important. And that is that we made the theme of this year's summit impact. And the word impact is really charged. In fact, we had, and we're going to be releasing this next week, we had a group from the Center for High Impact Philanthropy as a conversation starter for this summit to do an analysis of what the heck do we mean when we talk about impact. And the reality is we use a lot, but it has a lot of different meanings to a lot of different people in the world of philanthropy. So with that being the theme of this conference, we're going to sort of kick it off with a real conversation with our wonderful attendees, about 75 members and potential members, to ask them how do they think about impact. And then we will be kicking off a report that we're doing in partnership with a research organization called the Dahlberg Group that'll, in fact, over the next 6 months, really look at the impact of women's philanthropy, perhaps for the first time. And we're defining that term in our particular context as women funding women, big and bold.
Has anything like that ever been done?
Not that we're aware of. I mean, I'm on the advisory board to Indiana University Women's Philanthropic Institute, which is perhaps the most noteworthy organization that's focused on women's philanthropy. So they do, actually, big day, September 12th, might be the 13th, they're coming out with their Women Give Report 2013. So be on the watch for that. That will be coming out in the next day or two. So they've done a tremendous amount of research on women in philanthropy, and I would say are the hub for that, particularly in the U.S., but nothing like this that we know of. There have been some great books that have been written, Women in Philanthropy, an outstanding book by Sandra Hardy. So there's been books, there's been some studies, but nothing with the intentionality to focus on impact like we want to do.
Jackie, when your daughter, who you said is currently 13, when she's your age and an active member of Women Moving Millions, what would you like to be able to see or look back on and reference as, success? That while we've filled in this gap, we've been successful between our generation and your daughter's generation by accomplishing, fill in the blank for us.
Gosh, again, that's such a big question. I
love you, and I don't get to sit down and talk with you very often, so I got to ask you all the things I can think of in a short span of time that really reveal to the audience, who we are and what we're about, and why you and I are so connected, and why Sylvia Global exists, to get this message out to the world. So, fill in the gap for us, fill in that blank for us. What would it be?
I guess I'll connect it to something that happened this morning that left my hair on fire. So what left my hair on fire is there's this woman wrote an article on LinkedIn, Rachel Sklar, about there being yet another conference where there were no women, where in the technology space. And she wrote a kind of a sassy article on LinkedIn about, like, are you saying there's no women in technology? And she was, she's annoyed, and she's wonderful. She started an organization called Change the Ratio, which really is, again, very much aligned about changing the ratio of men and women in leadership and technology, you name it. And so there's been a lot of comments, and this one gentleman posted a comment about, you're painting another. I'm sick of hearing about sort of women's rights and women aren't being fairly treated, and you're all blah blah blah. And I posted a comment back saying, do you really think there's not bias still in our society? And very respectful comment, and he came back, just chewing me out, and literally I think ended with, "Shame on you, Jacki Zehner." And I know. Trust me, I've gotten worse as a writer on a lot of platforms. That I could quote some things that literally made me cry. But my point is, in the change I want to see in the world, is I am championing women and girls. I'm not championing me. I'm a very blessed person that's had incredible access and opportunity. Yeah, I was sexually harassed. Yeah, I was that, whatever. But I overcame it. But I want to be a voice to women who don't have the voice. And until they have it, I will not stop doing what I'm doing. So the change that I hope happens is where we don't see a world, where we eliminate bias, where it really is a world of access and opportunity, and that when women are not more likely, I don't want anyone to be poor, but are less likely to be poor, where 1 in 4 women don't experience rape or sexual assault in their lifetime, where girls have the same access and opportunities for education as boys do, where we're not marrying them off at 13, respectful of cultural differences, so I hope in 30 years that we will have raised a generation of kids that don't see black and white, don't see male, female, that have much more of a humanist perspective, and they don't go out bashing down people when they stand up for others and others' rights. And that's just, and I think our kids are becoming that. I think they're much less sensitive as we are, but the fact is there's still, as we know, tremendous amounts of bias in the world, and it's heartbreaking. And I just 30 years from now, I just hope she's fighting to eliminate poverty and create a more peaceful world. But the idea of it, particularly for me, about gender issues is not so charged, and there's not so much fear and loathing that go around this idea that men and women deserve equal access and opportunity.
Well, I also hope, Jacki, that even sooner than that, that within our society we can begin to see more civil discourse,
yeah,
and being able to be respectful. I think reincorporating just that word respect and the ability to agree to disagree and to still be respectful of one another's opinions without having to set women's hairs on fire. Jacki Zehner, thank you so much for being here with us on Sylvia Global. We'll look forward to having you back many times. We have a number of conversations coming up that we know are near and dear to your heart, and also wanting to highlight grantees that are the beneficiaries of where you've put your time and your passions along with your talents. Thanks so much.
Yes, Gail, Sylvia, thank you for all you do and being an endless champion. It's great to be a friend.
Yeah, oh, it's wonderful, Jacki, to know you. Jacki Zehner, tell our audience where they can connect with you, your website address, and those who would like to have you come as a speaker to their organization, how they can go about doing that.
Oh, thank you. Well, Women Moving Millions, pretty easy Google, womenmovingmillions.org, and over time it's going to be a much more than sort of an online brochure, but a very dynamic site around women's philanthropy. And then more personally, it's JackiZehner.com, JackiZehner.com, and that's sort of my personal platform in terms of sharing resources. I have incredible resources and facts on women and girls, as well as my own blog. I think I'm on my about 625th blog.
Are you serious?
Sort of my life story. I know. Isn't that crazy?
Is that what wakes you up in the middle of the night?
Yeah, and then I know it's kind of crazy, but it's my way to share and lift up so many people and organizations and ideas that I'm just so blessed to have some sort of affiliation with. So join me on JackiZehner.com.
Thank you so much, Jacki. Take care, and you can learn more about Jacki Zehner also here at sylviaglobal.com, and watch her TED Talk from last December. Absolutely phenomenal. Have a good day, Jacki. See you later.
Thank you, Gail, Sylvia.
Okay, love you.
Love you too.
Weatherby Asset Management is dedicated to providing exceptional wealth management services by forming partnerships built on trust, understanding, and thoughtful advice. For more than 20 years, they've been offering objective perspective, personalized planning, and sophisticated investment management to individual investors and families, as well as pension plans, foundations, and endowments. Contact them at www.weatherby.com. Weatherby Asset Management, located in San Francisco and New York City.